Hello everyone, I'm Brandon Bonifer and you are on Focus. And today I'm sitting down with Rick Gramza, the Chief of Police here in Marshfield, to kind of uncover and unfold some of the events that have recently taken place in our community. Rick, thanks for taking a moment to enjoy this opportunity to sit down and talk.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Your department and the city in whole has kind of been dealing with a lot over the last 9-10 days. How, coming off of last night and the events that unfolded yesterday at the school, what's kind of going through your guys' minds and thoughts at this time?
It has been busy. It's nothing that, unfortunately, we're not used to. We've had busy stretches of time. Usually the winter has a tendency to be a little quieter, but we do understand that at the schools there's often kids getting somewhat antsy, somewhat anxious for winter break, and events like this aren't completely uncommon, but I guess the number of events within a short period of time is rare.
Yeah, let's kind of go through that timeline a little bit. Starting with the first event that took place last Monday on December 9th. That event started with a note being found in the bathroom, which has kind of been the cadence that's been running through all of these. What did you learn from that event, or kind of what really sparked some of your guys' investigation? And how has your relationship and communication been with the school district regarding that particular investigation?
Yeah, with all of these investigations involving the school district, our communication, our collaboration has been, I'd say, top-notch. We work very well with them. They trust us. They've been reaching out to us very frequently. Having an officer on site obviously helps with that communication and collaboration. But yeah, the event that happened last week, or kind of started this process, was a couple of notes that were left in the in a handful of women's bathrooms, talking about a bomb that would be going off actually on today's date, which is December 18th. But based on that note and the notes that were left, we were able to work with school staff, work with administration, work with our officers, and were able to determine through video surveillance what kids had gone in and out of that bathroom during certain periods of time, when the note was discovered, when it was last seen to be clean or clear of any threats such as that. And through great investigation by our school resource officer and staff at the high school, we were able to come to the conclusion that it was two 17-year-old females that had left these notes in various bathrooms, and they were arrested for terroristic threats. And
which is no light charge.
Right, yeah, it's a felony charge. And those charges were requested through the Wood County District Attorney's Office. Both girls are out on out-of-school suspension pending an expulsion hearing, I believe, set for early January.
Now, when you talk about the events took place on Monday of last week, you know, there's a timeline of what you guys come into contact with, and there's also a timeline of what parents and students come into contact with. You know, through the decision processes and the discussions that you guys have had with the school district, you guys have put information out at certain points in that timeline. What information do you feel that is important to get out in the instance of the threat versus in the process of the investigation?
Well, first off, it's very important that we work together with the school district, because we could be pushing out different information at different times, and that could just add to the confusion. Obviously, with this case, I think there was information going out on the threat and pictures of the message because students found the message. And I think that information was being disseminated even before we necessarily knew about it, and before a lot of the district administration knew about it. So that added a little bit to that confusion that caused us, based on knowing that some media outlets may have this information prior to everybody knowing about it, and some parents possibly having this information and now calling with concerns, that we needed to be very transparent and push out as much information as we could, but still protect the investigation, saying it was ongoing and active, and that we would update with additional information when we had it.
So talking about media outlets and talking about pushing information out there's been a lot of comments on social media that maybe some of these events are being driven by all the communication taking place. What do you feel the responsibility of media is when it comes to educating the public on an event like this, or even your responsibility?
I think it's important to be transparent to an extent. Obviously, we don't want to give out information that's going to harm the investigation, but I think it's the community's right to know as much as we can share safely without necessarily, I guess, exciting or sensationalizing an event, especially if our investigation is leading us to believe that it isn't a credible threat, but more just maybe somebody crying out for help because of emotional distress, or just having a delinquent mindset and doing this in an effort to get out of school or have school canceled early.
And kind of furthering on some of the social media comments that are taking place, one of them that I saw from a lot of people were saying about putting cameras in the bathroom. Now there's some definite rules against that, but also I think it's helpful to point out that the hallways are all monitored by cameras. So throughout your investigation, have those cameras been pretty important to being able to make some of these arrests or come to a conclusion?
Yeah, those have helped. Also, the steps that the school district has taken to monitor the restrooms and all areas of the school. During breaks between class times, teachers are expected to go into the bathrooms and make visual observations as to whether or not there's anything written on the walls. Janitors and custodians are expected to do the same. And after that first threat that happened last Monday, all students had to sign out and be documented if they were leaving the classroom to go to the bathroom. And it would ultimately give us hopefully a shorter window of time if these threats continued.
So now we've had a number of threats. We've had initially 3 bomb threats, and then one threat that kind of maybe gave the hint of basically an active shooter event. Are any of these events related to your knowledge?
To our knowledge, I guess related in the sense that they're happening at the same school. In that sense, and as far as knowledge-wise, as far as the same, I guess, end product in place, potentially. We believe that each of these events are solely in an attempt to have school canceled or excused earlier, to have winter break started sooner than expected. As far as the individuals or the suspects or the arrested persons in here knowing each other and being part of a group or the same continual act, I can't say for sure.
So going through all these events, connected or not connected, you mentioned they all happen in the same facility, but the same core group, Marshfield PD and the school district, responding to these activities. Thankfully, none of those have really been creditable in a sense that anybody got hurt or injured. But what have you guys been able to experience? How have you guys grown from these situations?
I think the biggest thing that we can share with the community, and I know the school district would support us on this, is we treat each of these events like it's an actual live threat, or that it is credible in nature until we prove otherwise. We wouldn't want to become complacent and start overlooking things or blowing off the case or potentially taking it less serious, and if there is a true threat. And I guess that's just confidence I want to have the community have in us. We don't want them to be complacent, and if they see a threatening message or something, to just not take it serious, and we want that information shared with us. And in return, we're going to take each of these threats serious until we are able to prove otherwise. They don't have to, the community as a whole doesn't have to be worried that we're going to start responding in less of a fashion, even though the investigation is maybe leaning towards it being fictitious in nature.
And fictitious or not, if you charge somebody with that crime, that is the same level of seriousness.
Absolutely, yeah. When you have a terroristic threat, it doesn't have to be a threat that was able to be carried out. It's one that was caused concern and caused a disruption, obviously, to whether it's a school day or a work day or something similar. But they're all treated the same, absolutely.
So looking at individuals that are facing that charge, what is some of the damages, or what could the community expect that these individuals might see as a result of it?
The students will most likely be expelled from school. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet, and that's up to the school board, but they are facing expulsion. And also on the law enforcement side, they're all being charged with felonies. There's a potential that they could all be convicted felons, worst case scenario. Best case scenario, they might find themselves on probation, and if they successfully complete probation, they might get off with a lesser charge. But it's still a very risky proposition risky choice to be making by those students knowing that we are going to investigate this as though it's a serious threat and offense, and we're going to hold them accountable and request charges or suggest to the school board that an expulsion happen, regardless of whether they say they were kidding or just trying to have fun or whatever they may say.
So to reiterate a little bit, the first event took place last Monday, and 2 arrests have been made.
Correct.
What about the event that followed that I think it took place on Wednesday last week?
We're still investigating that. We've eliminated some individuals we thought were suspects. There's a couple individuals we're still looking at as possible suspects. That investigation is still ongoing.
And the event that took place yesterday, any leads on that?
Yeah, the event that took place yesterday, we were able to just today make 3 arrests. We arrested one 18-year-old for the terroristic threat, and we arrested 2 17-year-olds for party to a crime to the terroristic threat, acting as lookouts or, I guess, encouraging this individual to perform this act.
Now, when you say you're making an arrest, are you physically going into the school or going into, where these individuals are and physically arresting them, or is it just calling them down to the police station and having a discussion with them?
What happens in these cases, for the 3 arrests that happened today, the 3 individuals were escorted down to the main office, were interviewed, and were actually taken into physical custody with handcuffs, transported to Marshfield Police Department in a squad, and were ultimately transported down to Wood County Jail on these charges.
So talking about the events that took place yesterday. Yesterday was a pretty active day for the PD. That event, you guys dismissed school and you searched the entire school. At what time did you guys conclude your search at the school district?
Our search was concluded roughly around 2 p.m. The full search of the school probably began, I'd say, right around 12:30 p.m.
Now, through that search, did you use any members of SWAT or any K-9 units to conduct that search?
We had SWAT and K-9s on hand because they were training that day. We also had a number of officers, myself included, on scene, searching lockers, searching classrooms, searching office, storage areas, etc. The whole school in its entirety was searched from top to bottom. It was exhaustive. It was a lot of area to cover, but we were able to determine, obviously, the threat said that a bomb would go off at 1. It didn't. We were able to determine by 2 p.m. that there was no threat on the campus.
So moving on a little bit in yesterday's events, shortly before 5 o'clock, you guys were notified or tipped off that there was a subject potentially with a gun at the UW campus here in Marshfield?
Yeah, we got the call shortly before 5 o'clock that an individual saw a middle-aged male in a green stocking cap with a gun in their jacket pocket. They seemed disoriented and confused, and they were looking for a stairwell. That call came into our dispatch center, and it was reported as such. We had officers respond in emergency mode. We still had the SWAT team in town for training, so they were able to respond promptly. I think they were on scene within 15 minutes or so. And then it was just a coordinated effort by those on site to establish a perimeter, stop traffic. We had our auxiliary in. We had some ordnance officers assisting. We also were very fortunate to have the assistance of Wood County Sheriff's Department and State Patrol, who self-reported. We didn't have to call them. We called in some officers on overtime. It was right around shift change, so we had some officers start early. They would normally be starting at 6. We had them start at about 5:30. In all, we probably had anywhere from 25 to 30 officers on campus within probably about 20, 25 minutes. It had to be a coordinated search because it's a large size campus. We set out with certain teams of individuals, and they went through the whole school and searched for people that were on site. There was still some classes from night class going on. There was some faculty and staff on site, including a janitor. We evacuated all of those individuals as we came across them and escorted them to an apartment complex that was adjacent to the UW. During that, there was some behind-the-scenes work happening. We made contact with the complainant, who we believed was a witness. We soon learned that he had not witnessed anything, but he had been relayed this information by 2 students. We were able to get the identity of those 2 students. Once we had their identity and contacted them, they told us what they saw and reiterated what they believed they saw. It turned from being a middle-aged man to being an elderly individual. but otherwise everything else matched up based on what the report was initially. They were still on site, so we had officers then make face-to-face contact with them in their vehicle and confirm this information they had. As the investigation was going and unfolding, we actually received a phone call from a subject from the community who I personally know. And he had said he had been in the building walking because the UW opens up their campus to walkers when the weather is cold. When he had said this, I had asked him if he had seen anything unusual. He said no, that he didn't see anyone matching the description of the individual we were seeking. We asked him if he had talked to anyone. He said he had talked to the janitor, but that's really all he had spoken to. At that point, I just asked him just out of curiosity what he was wearing when he was there, and he said he was wearing a dark colored jacket and a green stocking cap. I asked him if the green stocking cap had a tassel on the top, and he said it did. I asked him if by chance he had spoken to any students, and he said, well, he had asked 2 students for directions because it was his first time in the building, and he actually got lost and was looking for a stairwell. So this kind of corroborated what the students had told us. I asked him if he would identify the students if I sent him a picture, and he said he'd be able to. And when I sent him a picture of our 2 witnesses, he said that was the students that he had spoken to. I asked him if he had any weapons on him when he was in the building at all, and he said that he didn't, that he just had some gloves in his jacket pocket. So I reached back out to the witnesses, and we spoke to them, and they confirmed that they had only given one person directions to a stairwell, and it was this person with a green stocking cap and a jacket. So ironically, the same person who had called us offering assistance and trying to share information of whether he saw something or didn't see something is the same individual that was thought to have had a weapon on campus and seemed lost or disoriented, which ultimately he was lost because he didn't know how to find the staircase. So he was a non-threat. He didn't have any weapons. He doesn't actually own any weapons. And it was, in the end, a misunderstanding, but both he and the witnesses were very apologetic based on the commotion this caused. I commended the witnesses on reporting what they did. I said, sharing this information allowed us to decipher it. I would rather have them share that than not share it, and something happen and them just not, concern themselves with it and somebody get hurt in the process. So they did the right thing by reporting what they believed they saw. The individual who was on campus walking didn't do anything wrong other than get lost and maybe look a little suspicious because he was lost and confused about his location. But in the end, it turned out, as good as it possibly could have.
Oh, absolutely. And, looking at this event, the entire community, I would imagine much of central Wisconsin last night was really paying attention what was taking place here in Marshfield. Do you think your response to that situation and just the collective body of the community kind of paying attention to what was happening was because of the event itself or because of the nature of everything that's been leading up to it?
Probably both. Obviously a potential of an individual with a weapon on a college campus, high school campus, whatever, is of concern. I think with everything going on in the community and surrounding communities, there has been challenges, but ultimately I think it's really good that this communication and transparency and open sharing is happening. But the fact that it's, obviously I'd love for there to be other attention, more positive, but I guess in the sense it is positive attention when arrests are being made based on criminal behavior and feared concerns are later learned to be, unsubstantiated in nature. So I think social media helps in this. I think media such as On Focus assists us with sharing out this message, and the many other media outlets who not only follow our social media page but are also able to share out information. We're able to reach a ton of people based on our page and On Focus's page and the other local outlets that I'm very thankful for, that those messages can get out. We're able to tell people to stay away from those areas. We're able to tell people that there's an all clear and such. It just makes communicating those things so much better.
So now both of these events yesterday were real life situations, and you guys responded to them in a real life way.
Absolutely.
Have you, as a SWAT unit, as a PD department, as a collaborative force between the school district and the police department, have had a chance to debrief these instances since yesterday?
We have, yeah. We actually debriefed last evening from probably about 9 o'clock until probably about 8:30 until I'd say maybe about 9:30 or 10 o'clock. It debriefed that situation and the situation as it was unfolding and being investigated yesterday at the high school was being debriefed in that, I guess, mid to late afternoon time.
So through that real life experience and that time of debriefing, was there any positives that came out of it? Any things that you feel that now the community is even safer from those instances taking place?
I don't believe that the community wasn't necessarily safe before because we were treating them like real life situations because we didn't know, and even if we had a hunch that it wasn't a real threat, we were treating it as though it was. So the community was never any less safe based on our debrief or based on our response. It's always good to train with other law enforcement agencies. We don't get a chance to do that frequently. It's good to collaborate and find maybe some areas that we need to be better on as it relates to maybe the UW. We learned that their camera system isn't up and running yet. We learned that the master keys that we had didn't actually work in the new STEM building. Those changes have already been made and we're fully equipped with keys to access all of those areas. So a lot of those, I guess, learning experiences, thankfully they happened in a situation that wasn't a credible situation. If it was a credible situation and we were challenged, I mean, it could have resulted in something worse, but we'd rather learn about these things now and fix them than not. We also learned that we didn't have the most up-to-date floor plan for some of the renovations that have happened at the UW as well. So that's already been remedied and we're able to better prepare ourselves should an event happen again.
So over the last couple of years, you guys have made some significant improvements to your guys' communication systems. Did that benefit you in this instance?
I believe it did. It's still the UW area is still in a lower area, and when you get into those larger complexes, being the UW or the Marshfield Senior High, communications are going to be a struggle regardless. One thing I was very impressed about is we didn't have a lot of, we call it walking on each other if we're trying to talk and somebody else goes on the radio and talks over us. That didn't happen a lot. People were only using the radio for necessary pertinent information. There's a lot of communication that happened over cell phones. But again, the cell coverage within some of those buildings wasn't the greatest. So we were able to, but I think our radios are portable radios that we had on us. From the outside, we were able to hear significantly better than we did with our previous radios. From inside the buildings, they experienced some challenges, but they said it was still better than what we had previously.
The MRAP was on scene at the UW. How vital has that piece of equipment come for you guys in the last couple of years since you got it?
That's been very vital. I couldn't count the number of times we've used it. And sometimes we've even used it as a deterrent. Just having it present on scene sometimes has de-escalated a situation. I think when if trouble is happening and you see that vehicle rolling up, it makes those innocent individuals feel safer, knowing that we're on our way or they're going to have a shield between them and wherever the danger is. But it's definitely been beneficial to the community, and I'm glad we have it.
And we recently made an investment to that. And if you guys want to follow that story, that is on Focus as well. But you now have a new apparatus that attaches to that vehicle that will definitely give that apparatus some additional functionality.
Absolutely, yep. We have a what's looked at as an extension arm, or what could be used as a ram to knock doors in or pull doors off, to move vehicles, tear down walls if we had to tear down walls, or break windows or things. So ultimately, it's you hope to never need it, but you want it when you need it, obviously.
Yeah. Over the events of the last week, my family definitely knows what I do. And they're aware of the situations that take place. But last night was the first time that it really hit me that our children are exposed to this. And my daughter said to me that she was scared to go to school the next day. Mm-hmm. And as a parent, you kind of reflect on that. And as someone in law enforcement that knows the greater situation, what message do you really have for parents? And what would you encourage them to talk about with their our students, our youth in this community?
I just want them to encourage the students to trust that law enforcement is there to help them, that they're there to protect them. That yes, bad things can happen. They can happen anywhere. But ultimately, the sooner that information that could hurt somebody is shared with an adult or shared with a teacher, a counselor, law enforcement, that the better the odds are of somebody who's maybe in distress getting the help they need. Situation maybe being stopped before it starts. We only know what we know as law enforcement. We rely heavily on the community to share information with us. We wouldn't have the clearance rate we have. We wouldn't have the success that we've had if we didn't have the trust of the community. I guess I would just encourage parents to just build on that trust and tell their children, regardless of age, to trust law enforcement, that they're here for their well-being. And when they see law enforcement present, it's actually a good thing. I know that some people say, I was scared to have my child go to school because there's a police car outside. Well, that usually means that you're safer because there's a police car outside. So rather than being fearful that there's a police car outside, if it was an active situation, we wouldn't let anyone get towards or even get near the school. If there's a police car outside, it's a good thing, and it's meant for safety and security. And I would want people to have that comfort and confidence that seeing law enforcement presence is a good thing.
So where do we go from here? I mean, we've had a heck of a 10-day span. We're going into the holiday season, but what's the protocol for the police department in the remaining days before the break?
Well, today we had 2 officers in uniform at the high school all day. We'll do the same tomorrow and Friday, just as added security. This is not something that we'll probably plan to do for the rest of the year, but just during this, busy time when we've had a lot of commotion happening at specifically the senior high, we felt that, and the school felt that an additional presence would be appreciated by both the students and staff and parents. That things get quieter after the break. I've told people that unfortunately one of the biggest lulls is between winter break and spring break, and how some students become a little stir crazy and start getting spring fever and such. So we're hoping that things don't escalate or continue. We hate to make examples of kids, but when choices are made that are putting others in danger, people are going to be held accountable. And hopefully the fact that these individuals are held accountable both from the school and from law enforcement, hopefully that will be a deterrent.
Well, Rick, thank you for his time. One last question I think that probably weighs on my mind a little bit, especially in light of the situation last night, is as an individual, as a community member, is it my job to determine if a threat's credible, or is it my job to see something, say something? Yeah,
it's absolutely, we ask the community to, if they see something, say something to someone, and let us make that determination, let us investigate it. It may align with information we already have. It may be information that we've already proven false. You only know what you know, we know what we know. I think once we put our heads together, we can resolve most situations, or it will, it'll all be pieces of that puzzle. But at the end of the day, let us have that information. We'll make that determination. We'll use our training and experience to ensure that the community, regardless of age, visitors are safe and sound.
Well, thank you, Rick. On behalf of the team of On Focus, I want to wish you guys a great Christmas season. Pass it on to your officers, and just thank you, the school district, Wood County Sheriff's Department, State Patrol, and everyone else that's really kind of wrapped their arms around this community and just kind of holding us together as we make it through. And I hope the season for you guys will become less busy and we'll be able to kind of move forward. And as you guys have hoped you take something from this dialogue today, I encourage you to speak to your friends and family, and I want to appreciate and thank Uptown Coffee here for giving us this space to kind of go through and just have this talk. I think any time that we have the opportunity to kind of share our thoughts and communicate with the community, we answer some questions. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important as media, as police, to try to keep the community engaged and informed in what we're doing. And anytime you can learn something, take something from away, you become a better citizen too.
Absolutely.
So thank you for the time. Guys, thank you for tuning in to On Focus. We'll continue to bring the coverage that matters most to you. I'm Brandon Bonifer. On behalf of everyone here, Merry Christmas. Have a great day.